We started running courses over a decade ago, and we've spent quite a few hours under parachute shelters and benders and all sorts of other improvised outdoor classrooms in that time. We've used them as teaching spaces, as cooking areas and food preparation areas, as somewhere to sit and carve, or just somewhere to sit around a roaring fire slightly out of the wind and out of the rain. As a business, we pay for access to thousands of acres of land, and we have to work closely with landowners and land managers to make sure that what we build and how we build it works for them and for that land. And as we come out of 2 years of lockdowns and the economic devastation of the response to the 2020 reboot of Flu Español, we wanted to build something a little more substantial. So I know what you're thinking, why have they just made me watch a minute of broken glass and dying ash trees? Well, this is a couple of acres of mostly unused land at the edge of a friend's farm. It's somewhere that might be familiar to you if you came along on one of our foraging instructor courses last year. It's not an unspoiled wilderness, but it doesn't need to be. This is going to be a site where we can meet clients, teach them how to work with wild food, and prepare what we harvest from the neighbouring meadows and woodlands. We have other sites we use for teaching expedition and wilderness skills, and we will be continuing to use those for years to come. At this particular site, we're going to be building structures, crafting furniture, and building some useful tools and clearing some of the trees and vegetation. And we thought it would be interesting to share some of what we're going to do. This won't be a tutorial series or us trying to tell people how they should do things. It's just us documenting what we're doing here and sharing the stories of the people helping us to do it. It might not look like much at the moment, but you've got to remember that this was filmed at the end of January, when North Wales looked bleaker than a grey box full of bleak things. Spring is just around the corner, and this place will look very, very different in a few months.
So first up was getting the fire lit because I want a cup of tea at some point. But first up, in terms of getting things built or cleared, is Jay's hacking away at some brambles there. He's going to make a track that winds its way through into what is going to become the main kitchen area, and then he's going to make another track that carries on a little bit further to the other area, which is one we've used before, which we've cleared previously. So he's going to get on with that. Meanwhile, I'm going to go in there and thrash around with a chainsaw for a bit. So just to head off any comments, yes, I know that some of the chainsawing work I'll be doing is not best practice. You don't need to tell me in the comments. I already know. This is not a how-to video, but I'm still alive and I've been doing this for quite a while, and I haven't killed anyone yet. Although the day's not over yet, so.
So what I am violently clearing away here are a mixture of trees that have either planted themselves in the wrong place, or they have escaped from captivity 20 years ago when this site was a commercial tree nursery. We need to clear a central area where we can build some sort of roundhouse style classroom and cooking area, and this spot is probably the best place to do that. And while I was thrashing away with a chainsaw, Jay was starting to clear an access track from the hard standing by the lane where we're going to park everyone to this new central area. Then our friend Andy turned up with his FPV drone and started sweeping through the trees and greenhouse like a demented cinematic wasp. Until, that is, he encountered some problems with some airborne debris and decided to call it a day. It was at this point the farmer turned up who wanted to know why we were attacking his trees and why his fields were now full of drones. We dived into the old greenhouse to get out of the wind and record this interview segment. And as I look back on it now, I can see that I've spent the last 18 months recording audio podcasts instead of video interviews.
News interview bit, which I'm always rubbish at, but...
Well, hello, Richard.
Sorry, I'll leave himself a couple of seconds. So this is Alistair. You're the farmer. You're Farmer Alistair for the purposes of this, aren't you?
I'll run with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
A reasonable nomenclature.
Sometimes you're Forester Alistair.
Yes.
Sometimes you're having to fix things, Alistair.
Constantly.
Can you give people sort of the one paragraph description of where we are?
We're in a very small couple of acres site that used to belong, or still does, belong to my dad, who ran it as a commercial tree and shrub nursery, which has sat disused and slowly falling into major dereliction for the best part of 20 years.
Yeah.
And we are now sort of slowly getting to the grips that actually this is quite a valuable site to us in terms of its positioning, and we're trying to sort of fix it up.
Yeah, because your farm's slightly different to the other farms in the area.
So my farm is different to other farms locally, which are mostly dairy and are what are usually grass farms. So they're taking that product into sheds and feeding it to the animals. We're very much not. We're a very small farm in terms of grazable areas, where we have a small number of sheep, and about 5-10 years ago, we began hearing the rewilding notions and sort of biodiversity was coming into sort of the farming world slightly. It was just being talked about. And about 5 years ago, I came across permaculture and also the regenerative agriculture coming out of America and also several places in Indonesia. And it was all about using livestock to improve landscape function, and all the lovely buzzwords that everyone is hearing now: carbon sequestration, emissions reduction, and also building topsoil. And it's simple principles like keeping the soil covered at all times, keeping live roots in the ground. If there are livestock, they're not set stocked, i.e. they're moved constantly, a bit like the herds of bison in America. And it's really about sort of resting land, but in a sort of carefully controlled way, so that it turns into what you want, which is better than what it currently is.
One of the reasons we chose this spot and this farm to run these courses, and particularly the wild food courses, because what you're doing with the land here promotes the growth of weeds, as maybe some traditional farmers would call it. But for me, as the selfish botanist, as the person who's interested in finding plants and mushrooms and things that are growing in the ground that I can eat and make use of, it's great because alongside everything you're doing, we can go to those edges, we can go to those hedgerows, we can go to those fringe transitional areas as we go from field into woodland and go, oh, well, there's that, and there's that, and there's that, and there's that, which if we went, well, not even that far away, it would have been glyphosated into annihilation.
Yeah, or grazed into, just not being there.
Yeah.
The edge effect is real. Wherever we can, we're trying to improve the amount of edge and the transition between woodland to grassland and the shrubs, etc., because that's where more life is happening. There's more nutrients there available to various species, and it's where the fun happens. I suppose, where it's most interestingly biodiversity wise.
It's not like we're moving into a wilderness area and destroying things. I mean, it might look like a woodland, but this isn't a woodland, is it, in terms of legal definition?
Yeah, outside this falling down glass house, it is, it's a treed area, because a lot of the product that my father sold remained on site and started growing into the ground, or the gaps between the weed barriers got penetrated, and now we've got hundreds of ash trees.
Yeah, that's just outside the windows here.
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
And it's not a woodland, because it's still very much a commercial site, even though it doesn't look like it on the whole. And it's for me currently, it's a massive ball and chain. It's not earning money, which for its location it really should be.
Yep.
But as a space, it needs a lot of work, and we don't want it becoming a woodland. Is a major thing, because it would change what we could and couldn't do on the site.
Yeah.
And luckily, it's still under its commercial sort of function still.
So we can run commercial courses here, and we are, because that is a thing for running courses, and this doesn't always come across on particularly British YouTube channels where somebody's off building something in the woods, and we're in the wilderness, one man survival wilderness weekend with only a tin of beans and the head of a rake, or whatever challenge they've made up for themselves. Access to land, finding places where you can do this legally, ethically, morally, and without taking too much away from that natural environment, it's pretty hard, isn't it?
Yeah. We're certainly in this country, you're more likely to find sort of that sort of edge between your urban area, or your sort of inner cities, where there's spaces that are sort of becoming more, nature's finding a way again, and you're more likely to be able to find an area like that where you can have fun. And
this is what we're trying to create here, something that will work, something that is safe to take people to, but also kind of is in keeping with their expectations of what it's going to be like, and hopefully supports your activities.
Well, exactly. We've had several discussions about where I want to end up, in the future, and I think we're quite aligned that sort of introducing others into how to be responsible in the outdoors, how to think and act before you even get out there, and then how to use those skills that you learn and pick up along the way to make you a better human, is very useful. That we're at least sort of on that same thought process, but coming from two very different sort of directions.
So I can't just set fire to your entire woodland and run away?
No, you're not.
Well, it's not a woodland.
It's not a woodland.
It's not a woodland, so I can do it.
You might find it hard to set fire to it. We do live in Wales, and it's green for a reason.
Well, today it's only rained twice.
Only?
Once Alistair had buggered off to go and fix a fence, we returned to the main area to start moving all of that brash that I had just chopped down. I wanted to separate the walking tracks from some of the other areas and create a kind of natural flowing path between the trees. We stacked the branches and smaller trunks along the edges of the path that Jay had just cleared, creating a sort of instant undergrowth or dead hedge. This will be somewhere that provides shelter for some of the smaller woodland wildlife and a place for a few different plant species to establish themselves. It will eventually rot down, becoming part of the system that bacteria, fungi and invertebrates need in places like this. While I was stomping around doing that, Jay was cutting away this membrane barrier that was under the leaf litter and topsoil. It's another remnant from the commercial tree nursery days and needs to be removed before we can start having fires here. Alistair returned with a couple of bush shirts for Jay to try on, and the conversation turned into a debate on which Kiwi Scandinavian wool brand was the best for working out in the damp British weather. And it was during this impromptu Instagram influencer fashion shoot we heard the noise of a dead oak branch crashing into the lane at the edge of the field. Never once to turn down free firewood, we headed out to snag it.
I believe this is called foraging. Rich, can I eat it?
Look at these. I mean, everything's edible at least once.
And as the daylight started to wane, we decided to pack it in for the day, but not before I tried to get the other two to sample one of the easiest early spring edible fungi, Scarlet Elfcup.
Try it, try
No,
a bit.
I don't want to. No.
You want to? You want to?
No, I really don't.
Try a bit, I'll try a bit.
Why do you not like it?
Richard, eat that! I went. And he went, that could have been poison.
Try a bit, look, I've got a bit.
Alright, fine.
You want to try some?
Try a little piece.
How you at? Put it in and take it out. After the person's
It's not bad,
Not
is it?
bad. Bit of taste to it. Amy's
Earthy.
Amy's hands.
Give it a bit.
All that temperature's just dropped.
Can you eat mushrooms
It
one-handed?
does remind me of some mushroom. Obviously, it is a mushroom, but no, it does taste. Yeah,
That
that's what
mushroom
I'm
tastes
getting.
like mushroom.
No, but I mean, you like the closed-cut mushrooms you get in the shop?
Yeah, but
Tastes bang on like that.
it's an umami kind of fungal flavour. But they're quite good. They're really good fried with bacon.
Okay.
Surprisingly, a lot of things are really good fried with bacon.
Bacon.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
You don't get that with Raymears, do you?
I did that for my tea the other night. I just couldn't be arsed cooking, so just a load of bacon butties in the pan.
It never feels like we achieve much in these short winter days, but we have laid the groundwork, quite literally, for everything that comes after. Next, we will need to start putting in the poles and structure for the central cooking and teaching area, and hopefully that will be coming in the next few weeks. Thank you for watching. You can see our range of wild food and foraging courses by following the links below or heading to originaloutdoors.co.uk.